Welcome back to the Tackle Obesity podcast presented by Smith Sinus and Migraine Institute, live from Radio Row in downtown Phoenix. We are here with KCAA Radio, and I will be your guest host today, Grace Del Pizzo, and I'm here with Dr. Kevin Smith. Now, Dr. Smith, what brings you here today?
Well, I tell you, Grace, it's very exciting. I've discovered the root cause and the cure to migraine headaches, and I'm here to deliver the message to all these players and other folks that are attending the Super Bowl.
All right, so you cure migraines.
I
How
cure
do you do
migraine.
Can you explain that?
Well, I'm an ENT facial plastic surgeon. I've been practicing 30 years, and I noticed that people were getting well from these horrible headaches when I would do these certain procedures in their nose. And when I looked at my data really critically, the last 10, 15 or so years, it was evident to me that everybody who got a scan, a sinus CT scan, not a brain scan, but everybody who got a sinus scan has the abnormalities I know cause migraines. And when I do my 1 hour Smith sinus migraine technique, which is covered by insurance, my results are over 90% in having no more migraines or headaches.
Wow. So how often have you done this procedure? Is this something you've been developing over the past couple of years?
No, this is something that I've done thousands. I've cured thousands of people. And the good thing is it's people with all type of headaches. It's not a sinus migraine. It's all the different migraines that are out there I have cured. I've had families with migraines who I've cured. People who have hemiplegic migraines that resemble a stroke, I've cured. And just recently, we've really been looking at the neurological symptoms that accompany migraines. Some aura might include dizziness, ringing in the ears, facial paralysis, slurred speech, seizures, tremors, paralysis of the arms and legs. And when I do the procedure to fix the migraine, all of those symptoms go away as well in patients I've cured. It's pretty exciting.
Very. So yeah, it's a sinus abnormality. What exactly is the abnormality?
Well, you know, everybody's nose protrudes from the face and the face gets hit every now and then. Even when you come through the birth canal, that's the first trauma that we have. And that can cause structures in the nose to bend and warp and be abnormal. Of course, when you grow older, you can be in car accidents, bicycle, sports,
right,
where you get hit on the nose. You don't necessarily have to break the nose, but an impact to the nose will cause the septum to bend and cause other things and lead to other problems. And so that's one of the major abnormalities that I find. But it's very evident that when you get a sinus CT scan, my expertise allows me to look at those scans very critically, figure out what needs to be done. And everybody who gets a procedure, it's customized to whatever the findings are on the CT scan. So it's not just like I'm going to take you and just do the same procedure on everybody. No, it's customized based on what I find on the scan.
So migraines are connected to nose trauma?
It is connected to nose trauma, yes. And think about it, the nose is intimately associated with the brain. I mean, the brain is sitting here, the nose is just right under it, and it's very highly sensitive. What I've been telling people lately since we've had the pandemic is that, a testing COVID swab hurts.
Yes.
And the reason it hurts, and the reason it hurts is there's some very sensitive structures in the nose. So having an abnormality in your nose all the time is akin to having a COVID swab stuck in your nose and you just let it stay there all day and night.
Ugh.
And so what I'm doing, I'm removing that abnormality, that COVID swab, correcting things, and basically normalizing your nose so that it functions normally like everybody else who doesn't get migraines, and you just go on with your life.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. It's very life-changing, because I have patients who are depressed, they're disabled, they can't work.
Right.
Some of them have suicide ideations where they just really think that, I can't take this pain anymore, and they want to take their lives. And fortunately enough, they find me and I'm able to let them know that there's hope for a cure. Matter of fact, there is a cure, and the cure lies with me. I've had people with several nasal sinus surgeries who have had persistent migraines who I'm able to cure. So I don't want people to think that, I've already had a septoplasty, I've already had sinus surgery, so it must not be mine are genetic, No. If you have migraines or chronic headaches, you are a candidate for my procedure, because the numbers just say that. Because everybody who sends me a scan from all over the country has the abnormality, and I cure 90+% of those folks.
Wow. Have you done the procedure on any high-profile patients yet?
I just had a baseball player I did about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and he's just getting ready to go to spring training. So one of the divisions of my practice that I'm just starting up is going to be a nasal sinus sports medicine division.
Wow. All right.
Because when you think of athletes, like these athletes here that are playing in the Super Bowl and the former athletes, they have a higher incidence of migraine. they have a higher incidence of sleep apnea. And a lot of that's connected to the trauma that they've received to their nose, and they're not breathing optimally. And I think breathing is fundamental. And a lot of times we forget that and think that, oh, I have to work out more, I have to diet and exercise, I have to get my sleep. But if you don't breathe well, you'll only be able to get to a certain level of athletic performance.
Right.
By correcting the nose, you will optimize your breathing all day and all night. You'll be able to practice longer, recover faster, get oxygen to the brain and to the muscles. You'll get stronger. And then for professional athletes, of course, they will achieve their peak athletic performance and be able to have longer careers, which will then be more lucrative for them. And that's very important for highly tuned athletes like these athletes are here that are playing football. But it applies to baseball, soccer, track,
Right.
all of those. Yep.
Right, definitely. Because I know there have been football players like, for instance, Terrell Davis, who've had to retire because these issues have become so strong.
Yes, Terrell Davis, he missed a quarter of the Super Bowl and because of migraines, and he's like the poster board for the NFL and migraines.
Right.
So the goal this week is to get a hold of him, and he's actually going to go out and get a scan. We have a scanner on site at the Super Bowl here at the England building. So if you're in Phoenix and you're around, you can go by the England building. And we have a scanner out back. We can get a scanner on site. We're going to scan him today. I know he's going to have the abnormalities because that's just how the numbers play out. And I'm just going to be able to determine what it is exactly he has and what exactly I need to do to fix him. And again, once he has his procedure, he'll be off and running and be pain-free and breathing free and just feeling better, living his better quality of life.
That's wonderful.
It is wonderful.
Where can our listeners find you if they're interested in this
That's
procedure?
a very good question. Thanks for asking.
Of course.
Yes, my website has a lot of information. It's kevinsmithmd.com. My Facebook page has dozens and dozens of video testimonials, and that would be Smith Center. There's also a Vegas Smith Center, but you'll know when you see the medical stuff, right? But it has lots of videos, and the Instagram is at Smith Center, but our phone number is 713-795-0600. Again, that's kevinsmithmd.com, 713-795-0600.
All right. That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, Grace. You did a great job.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you interviewing me and helping me get the word out to those people who suffer that they don't have to suffer any longer.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
So that was Kevin Smith with the Kevin Smith Migraine, the Kevin Smith Sinus and Migraine Institute, our sponsor for today. We have so many more sponsors coming up, so many more people to interview, including we have some National Guard members coming up, and later on today, Dick Butkus. So stay tuned. But for now, we're going to be moving into some more Super Bowl coverage since we are on Super Bowl Radio Row. So the plan for today is to go through position by position and focus on the positions that maybe Kansas City has over Philadelphia and the positions that perhaps Philadelphia has the advantage over Kansas City. So first we'll start with quarterback. Now, this is a very highly contested matchup. As we know, Jalen Hurts was the MVP runner-up last night. Patrick Mahomes won the MVP. And Jalen Hurts, this is really an example of a position where, especially at the Super Bowl, the two best in the game currently are the ones playing. Jalen Hurts is second team All-Pro. Patrick Mahomes is first team All-Pro. Both of them made the Pro Bowl in their respective conferences. So this is an all-star matchup we have here today. So we have Jalen Hurts, who obviously was the runner-up last night, 3,700 yards, 22 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions. Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, 5,250 yards, 41 touchdowns with 12 interceptions. So while Hurts may not be throwing as much, he has the added edge of rushing. Hurts, as a quarterback, has 760 rushing yards and 13 rushing touchdowns, which, especially for a quarterback in today's league, is almost unheard of. Mahomes, on the other hand, he's a mobile guy. He extends the play very easily. He has 350 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. So while he also has the rushing aspect, it's nowhere near where Hurts' level of excellence is in that aspect. So either way, this game will shape up to be a great showcase of how the quarterback position is meant to be played, especially in today's league as well. And so I think, especially in the quarterback position, Mahomes has the edge. The MVP voters also agreed last night. Mahomes has a slight edge here, but don't discount Hurts in the running game at all. All right, coming up, we have 2 sergeants from the National Guard. Our 2 guests on the show today. Let me take the mic out of the mic stand. All right. Thank you so much for joining the show today. Would you please introduce yourselves?
Oh yeah, no, I'm Staff Sergeant Longy, Paul Longy.
All right.
Sergeant First Class Ben Taylor.
All right. Nice to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So why did you get involved in the National Guard?
Honestly, for me, it was just about, serving my community and then, being a part of something bigger than myself.
Right. Definitely, Ben.
Same, I always wanted to serve, long lineage of family members that served, and just wanted to do something that kind of helped the community serve the country.
Right. Absolutely. So can you both give us a rundown of your respective careers?
Yeah, so I actually joined right out of high school. So I joined my senior year. And right after that, I did, my initial training. I went to boot camp, went to my job school, and then I actually was able to go to airborne school, jump out of some airplanes. That was actually pretty cool. And then after that, I did a 2-year service mission for my church. And then I came back and I went to BYU, where I also was, I played on the team for a couple seasons, and I was in the National Guard during that as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben.
So yeah, I kind of went a little bit different route. I joined after I went through college, played basketball, and didn't know if the military would kind of get along with that, So basically, after I graduated, I started teaching and joined the National Guard to do it just part-time, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer, and still serve. And it kind of turned into a more full-time thing. Ended up doing serving on 2 border missions on the southwest border, and then deployed once to Iraq and once to Afghanistan as a helicopter mechanic. I used to work on the Apache helicopter. And then 2013, I got back from deployment and came right into recruiting, and I've been doing that since.
Right. Awesome. So what's the most rewarding aspect of a military career?
So for me, I would say it's that sense of belonging and, selfless service. So just those 2 things, being a part of, the National Guard and being, a part of serving the community, I would say that's like a really rewarding aspect of it. But then, just also knowing that, you're part of something bigger, I think is what really ties into why someone would want to serve,
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And for me, it's the service aspect as well, but also just pushing yourself and being ready for a challenge and just really going above and beyond what you ever thought you could do. And, being able to serve is a huge part of that.
Right. On the flip side of that same coin, what's the most challenging aspect of a military career?
I think it would just have to be, the mental challenges that you have to go through. Obviously, physically, you have to, be physically fit and you have to do all the physical training. But I think to do that, you need to have a mental toughness to it and really just think end goal, I'm doing XYZ training to become certified, to help the community. And so, when things do get really hard, like physically or mentally, like whether you're, at a camp or at a training or, anything like that, like you just really have to have that mental fortitude to really like push through it. And so I think just the mental aspect more so than, the actual physical things that we do is probably the hardest part.
Right. Definitely. I can see where that plays in. What do you think?
I would say just the balance of time it can be a challenge. Certainly, especially if you have a family, putting too much into the job or not enough. It's tricky to balance that out sometimes, but it requires patience on both ends, both from the family and from the military somewhat. But yeah, for the most part, that'd be the most challenging piece. But I mean, that's just me personally. Other people might not struggle with that as much. So
Right. Right. So veteran wellness and health is a topic that's rightfully gaining more and more attention nationally in the media. What specific aspect of veteran wellness would you like to highlight the most as this is important?
I think it's just seeking out help and, involving yourself in more, I guess you could say, practices that would make you, more healthy, mentally or emotionally, instead of, I guess, in the military, sometimes we think like we're really tough, right? And like we have to like grind it out. But I think as we go more into, exploring wellness and exploring like, what it needs to be, like what it takes to be mentally healthy, I think just as long as we're exploring more so what methods might work, and instead of like closing ourselves off to the idea of having to tough it out.
Right. Absolutely. What do you think?
Yeah, just having the courage to seek out help if you need it, and realize that you're not alone. That there's plenty of assets, there's plenty of different programs out there that people should reach out to if they need it, and to not be afraid or ashamed. Mental health, everybody has their ups and downs, and it's important to just remember that it's not a bad thing, to be needing some assistance sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Finally, this plays along with the last question. What message would you like to send to any veterans or even current people serving in the military who may be struggling at the moment?
Yeah, my thing is just to, we all have access to those resources. I think it's just a matter of, doing your research and going online and actually finding out what local resources there are. And there's a lot of online resources that'll, are available to veterans. But if they don't know where to go, honestly, they could contact their local recruiter, and then just, we know everything of who to call or where to go. But I would say that's last resort, but outside of that is just seeking out the help and not being ashamed of, thinking that you need help, in your emotional and mental health.
Right. Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, the same. Just don't be afraid to reach out. That's the biggest thing.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Thank you for your service as well. It was so lovely to meet you. Have a great day. Have a great day. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yep.
All right. So next, we will move back into the Super Bowl coverage for a moment. Actually, never mind. We're going to go into another interview. Hello, Mr. Harris. Thank you. All right, so we're moving into interviewing Dr. Vincent K. McGurney from the New Jersey Orthopedic Institute. Hi, nice to meet you.
Vincent McElroy.
Nice to meet you. Grace Alfizo.
We're doing cutting edge things in medicine, and Bart Oates is my patient. Bart is the president of the NFL alumni.
Oh, wow. All right.
So I'm my neighbor, Chip. Should I button this or do you want to button that? Do you want to button this here? This is radio, right?
Whichever way you choose. It's radio. It's being live streamed to YouTube, but most people will be listening on the radio at the moment. So here, I'll take the mic out so we can get better audio. All right. So first of all, what brings you here today? What would you like to discuss?
Well, I'd like to discuss wellness and performance enhancement for life. And Bart Oates, the president of the NFL alumni, is my patient, neighbor, and close friend. And we've been talking about this for years about how do we live longer. And Bart looks great. I think his body fat was probably around 8 or 10, something like that. And he has dropped weight. Did his total knee reconstruction years ago, and he's so happy with it. Sister's Charity took care of him at St. Joe's Regional Medicine. It's actually St. Joe's University Hospital now in Paterson, New Jersey, the oldest industrial capital of our new colonies in our country. So we're talking about those type of things.
Wonderful. So what inspired you to go into this field of orthopedic surgery and sports medicine?
Well, it happened to be my sisters. I have the 4 sisters, and all of them said, you need to be a doctor. And I was like, okay. So my youngest sister was a doctor, and we both became orthopedic surgeons. And then sports medicine just evolved as a branch of orthopedic surgery. And arthroscopy just started when I was a resident and a fellow. I was the first full-time fellow at Mass General Hospital and Harvard Medical School back in the late 80s with Bert Zarins and Carter Rowe. Carter's deceased, but they were famous shoulder surgeons and knee surgeons, took care of the Boston Bruins hockey team, the New England Patriots football team, and tons of other people, because they did, when I was up there, the first shoulder and elbow arthroscopy in the world.
Ow.
It was incredible. And we dissected cadavers and found the right place to go. And so we really worked that through, and they were great teachers and great mentors. And then arthroscopy boomed. And so I fell into that. My youngest sister was a year behind me in orthopedics and did sports medicine and arthroscopy in Salt Lake City, Utah, with Bob Metcalf, who at that time was one of the first 3 people to begin arthroscopy in the United States. So she became the first women arthroscopists, and we both did sports medicine, and that's how we got into it.
Wonderful. That's amazing. So what would you say, what orthopedic issues do athletes suffer more than any other people do?
Well, believe it or not, most of us, the most common injury are ankles. Almost every one of us sprained the ankle, but the knee is the largest joint in the body. So that's up there in the top 3 or 4 that get injured. And depending on sports like football, it's even higher, and basketball. So it's ankle number 1, but not as devastating. And knees probably is more of the devastating ones that occur to us, as well as shoulders. But it's all sports related. Now that women, I have 4 sisters, 3 older sisters, 1 younger, have the opportunity to play sports fairly now, and in a way that they can excel. Women, unfortunately, have developed more of the knee injuries than the men. In many ways, women are much stronger than men, especially their lower extremity, pound for pound.
Right.
But the area they were weaker was the upper body. That happened in the military. First, groups of women going into the academies, military academies, all got hurt. And the men said, oh, those women. Then the women got stronger, and they have less injuries than the men. They go, those guys, man, what a problem they are. So that's, so those are the kind of injuries we see, and it's really revolutionary what we can do. We can do with proprioception and things that there's new devices out, like Topical Gear has with Bill Bew, my good friend, that are dynamic stabilizers of the joints. And they cost like $55 each, like nothing. And my motion expert, Bob Session and Janet Lee, will tell you how to run and move in space in a whole new way to cut injuries down. So not only do we do great surgeries, robotic joints, which Bart had, and do arthroscopic reconstructions, and mainly the knee and shoulder, but we also do how not to get hurt, how to stay well, how to recover faster, how to cut your ACL tears down by between 60 and 80%, depending if you're a man, 60%, 80% woman. So it's a fascinating field. Orthobiologics, we're injecting stem cells, PRP. You're going to hear more and more about that. We've been on the forefront with that for about 40 years. And now we're really taking stride, and these things are really picked up, and we're going to be one of the best anywhere.
Definitely. So you mentioned living longer. I'm a little bit interested in that. What does that entail? What are you kind of taking steps towards to work on that?
Well, we loved the super agers. Those are people who chronologically grow older and physiologically get younger. So when they're 88 and the next year they turn 89 chronologically, they're 87. Then they're 90, they're 86, because they're watching their eating patterns, eating a lot less and frequently. They're doing new exercises. We can show them how to walk differently, how to change direction and not hurt themselves, and how to perform at a level that they may haven't performed in 20 years. They got their weight down, mind and body. We have a company named Apollo. That's very, very interesting that Bart Oates is involved with. And now I'm going to be, because I just met Dave Rubin here at the event. And they have an incredible thing as a psychiatrist to do on how do you recover from anxiety after a big event when your heart's pounding? How do you adjust to the scene here, the Super Bowl? It's millions of people watching and not get petrified and conk out. And so we're looking at all of those aspects of living well and performance. So we've been working on that for over 40 years. 40, not 4. Yeah. So you'll be in that group, and you can be 90 and 100 and playing great sports, enjoying life, not crippled. And also, you have to remember that many Nobel laureates were in their 80s, 90s when they did their greatest inventions in the world. So I'm looking forward to it at 71 going on 51.
I look forward to it too later in life. So because we are at Super Bowl Radio Row, I do have to ask, do you have a prediction on the game on Sunday?
Game will go down to 1 minute left, and whoever wins. We happen to be in New Jersey, so you can guess who we're probably rooting for there. And Stan Walters was on the Eagles for many years. My father taught him in college. You're talking a long, long time ago. All pro right tackle. And I think Stan's still alive. He hears this. I hope he gives me a buzz at my cell phone, because he's got it through some other friends. So my father loved Stan. He would go to St. Peter's University in the off season. He had his graduate degrees, and Stan was about 6'7" and about 290. So no one messed around with Stan's.
Right.
But I'm giving a shout out. Stan's around still. Get a call to Vincent McInerney and Professor McInerney's son. And I'd love to talk to you again.
That's amazing. Thank Yeah, I'm from Philadelphia, so I get it. I'm from
Said all
Delaware
right
County.
things.
Yeah, I'm from Delaware County, so I understand. Finally, if our listeners are interested in reaching out to you for anything regarding orthopedic surgery, sports medicine, getting younger as you get older, where can they reach out to you?
Well, on our website, which we're revamping, and my daughter's doing that, Laurel, for us, it's njortho.org. And that's probably the best way to get us for New Jersey Orthopedic Institute in Wayne, based in Wayne, WAYNE, New Jersey. Or telephone is 973. That's a good one. Give the wrong number. 973-694-2690 on 504 Valley Road, Suite 200, Wayne, New Jersey, 07470. Ortho info. Ortho institute.org. Said the wrong thing. Orthoinstitute.org.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. It was
Great.
wonderful to meet you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Oh, I don't have one, but all right, perfect. Okay. All right, perfect. We are adding an extra co-host. We're adding on Shane Fricky. Welcome back to the show.
How are you guys all doing? I'm excited to be back on the show for the third time, and I'm not the only one that's going to be added here. We're also interviewing another doctor. This is Dr. Rabin. Dr. Rabin, thank you for coming on today.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So can you first, I guess we'll just cut right to it. We'll talk a little bit about the device that you're wearing right now on your shirt and what it does and just how you got the idea, and just explain it to everybody.
Sure. So the device I'm wearing is called Apollo. Apollo is developed out of research at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, trying to figure out how to help people recover from stress more effectively. We started with veterans and people who were trying to come back, who were very, very elite physically and mentally, but who were struggling to reintegrate from society back into society and civilian life when they came back from war. And then that quickly became something that we were looking at elite athletes and people who were struggling with extreme performance anxiety, challenges with recovery after performing. And it became very clear that when you look at all these people, that they have their stress response system is very active. It's too active too much of the time, and that recovery needs to be prioritized. And we all know we can't sustain peak performance unless we prioritize recovery. So otherwise you just burn out, and that's what burnout is. So we figured out, after mapping out the whole safety response system in the body and how the body optimizes recovery, we figured out that soothing touch, can put the body into a recovery state almost instantaneously. And that's why massage works. That's why hand holding and hugs work. And so after figuring that out in the lab at the university, we did a couple double-blind randomized placebo-controlled studies in athletes and non-athletes, which were very positive, showing that Apollo was the first technology to improve heart rate variability and resilience within 2 to 3 minutes in the lab. And then that technology became a wearable that was commercialized in 2020 that delivers sound waves to improve recovery for the body.
And so you said you started with the military, but when did you decide, or when was the process of like, this is something that could really benefit athletes, especially football players who need recovery after those big games?
So I think that was a big part of it from the beginning, because veterans are and military, active duty military folks and elite athletes experience a lot of the same stress. There's a lot of performance anxiety, right? There's a lot of difficulty winding down. There's also a lot of head trauma. There's a lot of physical body trauma. There's a lot of overworking the body and overstressing the body over time. And when we saw what was happening in the veterans group, we were actually working with elite athletes at the university at the time, and we were realizing that they were experiencing the same problems, the same results from head injury that we were seeing in the military folks. And this is a trauma response in the body. It kicks off a dysregulation of the stress response. And so when we saw the patterns and similarities, I think it was 2 years after we started working with veterans in this area, we won an athletic award at the University of Pittsburgh, which then funded the current trial that was just published this past year in 2022. And that ultimately set the stage for how elite athletes could use this to recover. And they've been using it probably for about 3 years now in professional teams and individual sports.
Is it like the team doctors will have them for like all players, or is it more like individual players would like they hear about it themselves through people, or is it more mandated by teams?
Right now, it depends on the sport, but right now it's mostly the individual athletes who are looking for anything that will help that's not a drug. They want something that's going to improve recovery and performance and help them sleep. That's not going to hurt their performance the next day, right? And most of the things like alcohol, sleep aids, prescription sleep aids, and opioid narcotics for pain, they can work for short term, but then they can result in performance impairment down the road. And that's not what any athlete wants. They want to get a little extra 1%. They want a little more recovery, right? And so that, so I think that was a really big priority, was how do we help people recover efficiently and safely? And so now that we do have a lot of teams using it, but it starts often with the conditioning coaches, it starts with the trainers, it starts with the people who are actually working with the athletes in the gym, in practice, and then it expands out into sometimes the starting line, the folks or the folks who are second line, who are going to be going on and need to stay warm and in zone when they're on the bench so that they can be ready to perform when they get out there.
How fast does it like relax you or soothe you? Is it a matter of seconds, minutes, hours? How fast does this process take?
That's a great question. So in stressful situations where you in the middle of a game time situation, in stressful situations where you have to perform a mental test, or you're mentally stressed or emotionally stressed, what we've shown in the lab studies, 2 double-blind randomized placebo-controlled crossover studies, which are the most rigorous form of scientific trial for any wearable or drug, shows that Apollo use results in improved heart rate variability and recovery within 2 to 3 minutes. And that is enough to boost cognitive performance and physical performance significantly. Up to 25% more cognitive performance in terms of accuracy on a test within 3-minute time frame. So you think about that kind of improvement, that's like the improvement that's comparable to using an amphetamine or like Adderall to boost focus. You can do that within 3 minutes just by calming your body. And we can all do it for free with deep breathing, but we were never taught. So if we weren't taught, then there are now tools like Apollo that can help us learn that. And then as we use Apollo, it actually trains the body to get in that state more easily.
So this is something that a player can, if a player is, let's say, is on offense, when they come out to defense, is it something you hold? Is it something you just put on your jersey, and then within that time frame they get back to that relaxed state that they potentially had before the game?
Yeah, absolutely. And or a new relaxed state. It might not even be going back to, but it might be going to a state that's relaxed and focused and ready to go. Do you know what I mean? So it's like not allowing the body to calm down too much, but really allowing the body to stay in a state that's ready for performance, but still recover enough to actually perform at peak. And so many players will, and individual athletes will actually just wear it usually on their ankle, and they'll wear it during play. Or if in sports where they can't do that, they'll go onto the bench and then they'll have them on the bench and somebody will hand it to them. But above all else, of all the things we're talking about, one of the single biggest use cases for this technology with teams and individual athletes is after performance. So because the recovery time after you're done with a game, especially a late game where you have to travel, after you're done with a late practice and you have to game the next day, the body needs to optimize that time to sleep and restore itself. If you have the best practice of your life and you have a game first thing the next day, but you don't sleep well, all the gains in that practice are going to look like not gains in the game the next day because you're not fully recovered. So the goal is, how do we give the body what it needs to settle down and speed up recovery to get to sleep as quickly as possible, because nothing improves our performance like a good night's sleep.
And from your just expertise, how important is mental health and mental health awareness in the sport of football?
So extremely important. I mean, so my background is in psychiatry and neuroscience. I've been studying chronic stress and mental health for a very long time. I'm sorry.
No.
I think that was my fault. Been studying chronic stress and mental health for a very long time, and how that impacts performance and recovery. And ultimately the mental game, depending on the sport, the mental game could be anywhere from 80% to 30 or 40%, but it generally does not go below 30 or 40% in terms of contribution, which means that your mental game and where your mindset is when you walk on that field could be anywhere from 30 to 80% of the decision of your outcome that day. So if you're not in the zone emotionally or mentally, not just physically, if you're not mentally present and ready to go and recovered mentally, or you had a fight with your significant other that morning or whatever, right? Or your child, any of those things will knock you down. And if we haven't practiced the response of training ourselves, which is really a practice thing, right? Meditation, mindfulness, these recovery techniques, it's just practice makes perfect. We need to practice those things. We need to prioritize them. As we do it, we get better at bouncing back from those little things that set us off. And then we actually are able to get closer to our peak when we walk on the field. So in football, I would say, depending on your position, your mental game is probably 30 to 50%. If you're a QB, it might be higher, right? If you're a running back or a lineman, it might be a little bit lower, but you still have to have a good attitude when you get on that field. You know, if you're not in the zone with what you're doing, you're going to get crushed because the other guy on the other side is going to be, right? So it's a critical part of the game in all sports, but even in football.
And that's something that we've been talking about this whole week, how the Super Bowl itself is such a huge event and the players are getting interviewed every single night. There was the NFL honors last night. There was this opening night ceremony, and it's just we've kind of been talking amongst ourselves of how can players stay locked in. So from your expertise, what's like the best way for a player who's going through all this media? Every single person in their family is probably texting them about the game. What's the best way that they can kind of stay locked in so that they have the best performance for the Super Bowl?
That's a great question. I think that the single best thing that any of us can do, which is taught through the Western mental health practices, but also taught from ancient Eastern and tribal techniques, is to breathe. We all have to learn to breathe because breath is our way to take a break. In any moment, it means we don't have to leave the room. We don't have to go to a resort. We can just stand there and sit there and take a deep breath or a few deep breaths for a minute or two. And that's enough to settle down the body and allow the body to enter a recovery state very quickly. That is the easiest, simplest form of meditation, which facilitates recovery. And it works really, really well. And we all are born with the ability to do it, and it's free. So if there's anything that we can do, it's really breath and breaks, right? We need breaks. We need to recover. Breath and just focusing our attention on our breath and saying, I'm going to pay attention to the feeling of the air coming in my nose, mouth, and lungs right now and nothing else. And then the feeling of it leaving, and do that a couple times, is the quickest and most sustainable way to train rapid recovery responses that keeps us sane and balanced and even, especially at times where we're being pulled in all different directions. At the same time, we also need to get our sleep. The sleep is absolutely critical. That's something we just all need to make sure we're getting. You shouldn't be staying up all night when demands on us are this high. And for those of us who are struggling with any of those things, try Apollo. You know, the tools like Apollo can really help us access these states more easily. And to be perfectly honest, most of us, myself included, were not taught how to breathe growing up. We're not taught proper sleep hygiene growing up. We were surrounded by screens and surrounded by video games and distractions and all these other things. And so having tools that can help us get there is okay. And we should use them because they can really help us.
No, I think that's pretty much it, except we are at Super Bowl Radio Row. So I got to ask, what do you think is going to happen at the game on Sunday?
That's a really good question. It's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a really good game. I hesitate to predict because I generally don't know.
Right.
I can't predict, but I know it's going to be a good game. These two teams are incredible teams. They've been working so hard to get here, and I'm excited to see them duke it out.
All right. Thanks. And if anyone is interested in using Apollo products, like visiting the website, learning more, where should they go?
So you can go to check out Apollo, apolloneuro.com. That's APOLLONEURO.com. Or even easier is wearablehugs.com.
Oh, all right. I like that.
I like that as well.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Great day.
Thank you. You too.
Let's see. Welcome back on the show, Shane.
Yes. Now you heard some wonderful things just about the sports science. And that was very interesting from the fact of just the preparation for the Super Bowl. Something that we talk about all the time is something that it's kind of like every single player going into it is kind of talks about how hard it is to prepare.
Oh,
So that was something very interesting.
Hi. Nice to meet you. Good. How are you? All right. So we have another guest on the show today. My name is Grace. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Would you please introduce yourself for all the listeners?
My name is Al Smith, former off-road linebacker for the Houston Oilers.
Nice to meet you. So
You as
what,
well, do I-
I think it should be all right. What-
I need to be here.
It should be okay. It should pick you up. What brings you on the show today?
What brings me on the show, obviously, to come to say hello to you guys. Obviously, obviously we have a big week. We got a lot of great things going on with the NFL Alumni Association. We are partnering with the state of Tennessee because I'm the president of the Tennessee chapter. We're partnering with the health department for an initiative called Gear Up, a Gear Up campaign. The Gear Up campaign is basically bringing awareness and education to underserved communities throughout the state of Tennessee about COVID and flu shots, and having accessibility and be able to get those type of things and have access, not telling anybody that they need to do it or have to do it, but it's having a resource if you want to do it, just being able to have the access to it. And the numbers show that obviously this still out there. People are still being affected. Families are being affected. Homes are being affected. Lives are being affected. Just being able to put it in a position where you can help, having town halls, listening sessions where you can go out to schools and like schools like high schools and communities and hear what they have to say. What are their concerns? What would they like to see better throughout everything? What would they like to see better done so that the state and the health department can go back and devise that from hearing from the citizens? Because a lot of times things are put out, but people, they don't see what's really happening on the ground or how people are feeling about what's going on the ground. So now you can really hear that information and understand it and really see what they're doing and implement programs that help those when they get that data back, they're able to help the individuals in those communities and throughout the state.
That's wonderful. How did you become involved with that?
Well, I became involved with that because of the fact that, obviously being a part of the Alumni Association, we're able to access a grant and apply for a grant. We got the grant through the health department to be able to go out and help the citizens of Tennessee, because we call it Gear Up because you just want to protect yourself. Just like when we're on the field, when we play, we wear helmets, shoulder pads. I mean, you don't expect to get hurt. You don't want to get hurt, but if you do get hurt, you want to minimize the blow, right? You don't see guys out there with no helmets on. They don't expect to get hurt. They don't expect to have a head injury. They don't expect to hurt a knee or hurt a shoulder or anything like that. But they have protection just in case. And if they do get hurt, it lessens the blows. The same thing with being protected, whether it be virus or what have you. If you do get sick, well, the chances of dying or being real sick and all those things are diminished, as the numbers have shown. So you really want to get protection and give them every opportunity to be at the best that they can be.
Right, definitely.
And this is switching gears just a little bit, but we were just speaking with Dr. Rabin, and he was talking about the importance of pre-game, getting yourself in the right mindset. I was curious if before a game back in your playing days, did you have any traditions that you do before the games, or how did you get yourself locked in to play?
Well, one thing about getting locked into play, it was just more of for me, it was more of a spiritual thing, being in a routine, really being outside of myself, because to play a game of football or a physical sport like that, you have to be outside of yourself. It's not normal. It's not normal to go hit somebody or go run into a wall, basically hitting these 300-pound big linemen and tackling these big running backs. And I mean, that's not a normal activity.
Right.
So you really have to transform yourself. That's why you see a lot of times guys change into somebody else. I'm not that guy that played then or what have you, but at the same time, you had to transform yourself into something other than yourself, if you can kind of understand what I mean. And that helped me a lot.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, we see players all the time who they're off the field. They're like big, giant, like teddy bear, all smiles. And then they get on the field, they transform into someone else. Would you say that's kind of what happened to you?
Yes, I think that is pretty much the norm. And that's what has happened to me. But on the flip side of that, the sad thing is that sometimes guys can't, it's hard for them to turn it off. And then that carries off into their personal lives or getting into fights or getting into situations at home or whatever that they aren't able to turn that dial off. And that's where the disconnect can be sometimes. And that's not the norm, so to speak. But at the same time, it does happen. But for individuals that have that problem, obviously there's help out there to try to help somebody with that. But you definitely have to recognize that is there and try to do something to help yourself.
Right, definitely. Pivoting back to Gear Up, what's the most rewarding aspect for you in being involved in this kind of organization, this community effort?
The most important thing to me is being able to give back to the community that served you so well. You know, when you're on the field, you have people, fans that cheer for you, that come out and yell at you, for you, whatever it is during the course of a game. But this is an opportunity to kind of give back to the community, to be able to keep them safe, keep them families safe, keep others safe, and be able to put themselves in a situation where they can, have a healthy life and be in a good situation. So anytime you can provide that to a community, and a community throughout the states, it could be rural areas, in the city, or whatever the case may be, but you're still able to really help the different individuals in that community. And that's my biggest reward, is being able to give back to the community that has served and cheered for me over the years.
Right, absolutely.
And now, since we are at Radio Row at the Super Bowl, we see a lot of red and green all over the place. I'm not going to ask you who you think is going to win the game, but who is the player that you're most excited to watch in this game on Sunday, or you think is going to have like the X factor of this game?
Well, I think obviously the X factor is, in my opinion, obviously the quarterbacks are going to be huge. There's great significance, obviously, in this game with the quarterback situation. Obviously, you have two young quarterbacks, two young African-American quarterbacks, two quarterbacks, one in their prime, one, is trending that way into his prime. And to be able to see them be able to perform on a stage, not only do you have guys that are great talents, they're great people. You don't see them in the news with crazy stuff happening. Great role models for all kids, and really a testament of what you can be. I mean, you can be a great player, a great athlete, and still be a great role model and do great things as well. So I think the X factor is whichever those two quarterbacks perform the best is going to come out on top, whether it be the injury to the ankle with Mahomes or to the shoulder of Hurts. Whoever can overcome that and kind of put that to the side or subside it for that one game, I think will come out on top.
Awesome, thank you. If any of our listeners want to get involved in the Gear Up initiative, where should they find you?
We're on www.nflagearup.org. And we have other ambassadors as well that have affiliations with the state of Tennessee. Warren Moon is one of our ambassadors. We have Javon Curse as one of our ambassadors, Brad Hopkins, Neil O'Donnell, Chris Johnson, great running back for the Tennessee Titans. Blaine Bishop is one of our ambassadors as well. And I think I said Delaney Walker, and obviously myself. So we have a lot of great guys that have affiliation or have played with the organization or have affiliation with the state of Tennessee to be able to help spread the word with the campaign.
That's wonderful that you're giving back to the community. That's amazing.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it. It's great to meet you.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show.
I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You too. You guys.
So the show is the Tackle Obesity Podcast. We're on Tackle Obesity Podcast. Yes, we're on KCAA Radio right now in Riverside, California. Yes. Once again, you are listening to the Tackle Obesity Podcast presented by Smith Sinus and Migraine Institute. I am Grace Del Pizzo.
I'm Shane Fricky.
And we're just about nearing the end of our show, so we'll see if we have any special surprises gearing up towards the end. But Shane, what you been thinking so far?
I mean, this is just today's, I think, definitely the at Radio Row. You can kind of feel I feel like it's been excitement the entire week of the Super Bowl coming in. I know that you probably relate to this a lot more than I am, but there's excitement the entire week. And today's kind of the day that I think that the nerves are starting to set in for the fans. I've seen a lot of fans starting to get a little bit more chippy, for lack of a better word, towards each other. And this is when it's like they are excited for the Super Bowl, but there's a game in 2 days from now that's gonna be really big game for a lot of people. So I like seeing that kind of shift in dynamic. But other than that, we had the NFL honors last night, which was very exciting. A lot of players got awards. No real surprises on my end from that. I think that there was a couple ones that I thought could go either way. But
Yeah.
I think that everyone that got the award for the most part was someone that I thought was going to win it, and everybody was very deserving of that award.
I agree with that. Like what you were saying with the fans kind of realizing. I mean, I think it's kind of the Super Bowl's been a huge abstract entity for the past season, especially the past 2 weeks. But both teams fans are like, oh, we're in the Super Bowl. That's great. I think now it's setting in that they're actually in the Super Bowl and that game is being played in 2 days. So I think it's becoming much more real to the fans. And that's why there's a sense of like you said, like heightening nerves in the air.
Yes, and it's interesting because these are two fan bases that this isn't new to them. We saw the Eagles won the Super Bowl a few years ago, but then most Philadelphia Eagles fans are also fans of the Phillies that were just in a
That's
huge
true.
playoff, just a great playoff story that had a song by Calvin Scott led everybody through the way.
It's not my own.
Dance on My Own. Then they had a great Super Bowl World Series. They didn't come out on top, but those nerves are just coming right back in. And then for Chiefs fans, I mean, this is practically an annual tradition now at this point. They missed out on last year, but it's for the most part. So it's very interesting to see these two fan bases that they both know what they're getting into. These are two fan bases that have been here before, but they still, as we're saying, it still is that big of a deal. And it's so huge that people still are getting very nervous about it.
The Super Bowl is still the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl is still the Super
No
Bowl.
matter
for
how
sure.
many times you've been there. Yeah. And the players that won. I mean, like you said, there were a couple I picked differently than how they came out, but I'm really happy with how they ended up for the most part. I like that the Jets swept the rookie awards.
I think
They have a bright future.
I think that is a very, very good thing for Jets fans after their quarterback of the future didn't turn out to be their quarterback of the future. And that's kind of made apparent this year with Zach Wilson being benched halfway through the season. And so a season
and
where
again, and again.
and then again, and then he came back and he goes benched again. And then, but there's this season that kind of had hope going into it because of this quarterback. That hope was taken away. But right when that hope was taken away, you had a great cornerback who looks like he's going to be a lockdown corner.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have a wide receiver that the Jets have not had a true wide receiver one that can go and get 1,400 yards, 1,300 yards on a yearly basis in a long time.
Right.
And so this is something for them that is very, very, very big for them for a team that they're starting to really trend in the right direction. Their coach seems like they hired the right guy in Robert Saleh. They've made some great draft picks. They've had an amazing draft. Breece Hall
Absolutely.
was
Oh yeah, I think
he
he
could
was
have
in
been
contention.
competing with Garrett Wilson if he didn't get injured. So
Played the
that's
same amount of games Brock Purdy did.
played the same
so-
amount of games as Brock Purdy as well. So that's 3 rookies right there that all very easily, and 2 of them did win Rookie of the Year, and the other one could have easily won it if he stayed healthy. So they have a very bright future. And then also the Hall of Fame was announced last night. I think personally, I'm a little surprised that Patrick Willis was not able to get in.
Me
I
too.
think this is his second year. I think he's one of the greatest linebackers. We actually had him on the show 2 days ago, so make sure you go check that out. And he talked about the importance of getting that gold jacket and being in that elite group of players. And so he still obviously does have eligibility. This is only his second year,
Right.
but I am getting a little bit surprised at the not getting in. But a player that did get in, speaking of the Jets and great cornerbacks, Darrelle Revis,
Oh yes.
did get in, and that's a great reward for him. A Jets player that really provided a lot of hope for this Jets team over the past 15, 20 years.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I mean, Revis Island was absolutely just a cornerstone in the history of cornerbacks in the league, period. So I think he's very, very deserving. And also, I was surprised that Devin Hester didn't make it in, but he has also much more eligibility. But I was very surprised at that.
Devin Hester is an amazing football player, and for him, his legacy, he will be like one of the first names searched up on YouTube by any middle school. Like,
Oh yeah,
obviously the Hall of Fame is a big deal for him, but he's in the Hall of Fame of YouTube NFL videos for life. There's not many
Absolutely.
people in that list, but Devin Hester for sure. I mean, when he returned that kickoff in the Super Bowl is one of the greatest Super Bowl plays of all time, will be played forever. And so it is a shame that he won't be in. And I think that him and Willis will get in. This was a stacked year. There's some
Oh, yeah.
great names. There's no name that got in there that was like kind of shocking. It's
Undeserving.
more just like, it's kind of just the math. It's like there's so many people that deserve to get in, and sometimes it just goes one way. The next year it might go the other way. But
absolutely,
I think Devin Hester, Patrick Willis, they will definitely be wearing a gold jacket in the near future.
definitely. And speaking of the Bears, we'll close out our show by saying this. Dick Butkus will be receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award tonight at 6 p.m. at the AE England building right here in downtown Phoenix. Hall of Famer Leroy Butler and Super Bowl MVP Otis Anderson will both be there. So for more information on the event, please visit vetswellnesssummit.com. That's vetswellnesssummit.com. And although Mr. Butkus wasn't able to be on our show today, stay tuned to our social media because we'll have the interview up shortly.
And we just like to thank all of you guys for listening back out here at Radio Row. It's been an amazing week out here.
Absolutely.
This is an opportunity that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. And I just really appreciate everybody listening, tuning in, listening to the interviews. And then, as we said, we still have some more interesting stuff coming up on the way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening.